Again, my name is Gwen, and today we'll be discussing how to cultivate strong executive function as an adult. And remember, we did mention when you registered to bring your child along. You may not have physically brought your child here today, but keep in mind that all of the information that we discussed today is appropriate for both children and adults, although we will be focused on adults primarily today. So we do have a bit of an agenda, and we'll be talking about what is executive function. That's what we'll start with. And many of you here now may have a good foundation already. You may be very familiar with that term, executive function. However, there may be many of you who have just discovered this term. You're just learning. So it's really important, no matter what your knowledge level is, that we take some time to reflect, perhaps get a new perspective, and chat about what executive function is, why it's important, and how we can strengthen executive function. We'll also talk about some assessment options, why assessments can be very helpful and very valuable with a plan of action, because it's one thing to just chat about the areas that we're having difficulties, but if we want to truly make a change, we have to have a plan of action in place. So assessments oftentimes help us clarify the right path for each of us. And then finally, we'll discuss play attention and how play attention is specifically designed to help you improve and cultivate strong executive function. I want you to imagine your brain as an orchestra and all of the mental processes that you need in order to be successful are the different sections of that orchestra. So your focus is the string section. Your working memory is the woodwind section. Your organization is the horn section, and your impulse control is the percussion section. All of those sections are in place in the orchestra. However, in order for the orchestra to create beautiful music, you have to have a strong conductor, because the conductor is the person that manages all of those different sections. The conductor organizes each section, tells each section when to start, when to stop, when to play loud, when to play soft, and how to integrate smoothly with all of the other sections. So with a strong conductor, you could expect to hear Beethoven. However, if you have a weak conductor, you may expect to hear Beethoven, but instead you hear chopsticks or just random noises. The conductor of your brain is executive function. Executive function manages all of those different sections of your brain. It manages and organizes all of those mental processes. So you may wonder at times, why is it that I'm so bright? I have so much potential. I am truly capable. However, I struggle at work. I struggle at home, or perhaps I'm struggling in school. You may see moments of really great focus. You may even be able to hyper focus at times. You also may be able to complete amazing projects, but it seems inconsistent. If you do not have a strong conductor, meaning you have weak executive function, then you may expect to have high performance, and yet you're experiencing failure or difficulties at school, at home, or in the workplace. So it is truly critical that we take time to develop that strong conductor. If we look at all of the different processes within executive function, these are all the different sections. Let's chat about each section and what they mean. Working memory is one of those mental processes. Working memory is your ability to take in information, Hold that information in your mental workspace, manipulate that information, and then give a response. So it helps with reasoning, problem solving, evaluating. It's different than short-term memory. Short-term memory is just information you hold in your mind for 15 to 30 seconds, and then you give that exact same information back. Working memory is when I tell you how to get to my office, and I expect you to hold all of that information in your mind and then be able to follow through with those instructions so that you can actually get to my office. Inhibitory control. This is your ability to stop, think, and then act. So if you have difficulties with inhibitory control, you may find that you often take actions without thinking about the consequences, or perhaps you rush through your work. And because you rush through your work, you miss important details. Organizing, prioritizing, task initiation, all of those kind of go together, don't they? The ability to start a task right away, keep your attention just on that task until completion, and being able to organize not only your thoughts, but your physical activities around you. Self-monitoring is understanding how your actions affect other people. Mental flexibility is your ability to transition freely from one situation to another. So if you have difficulty with mental flexibility, at times you may find that you are very involved in a project, right? And you are maybe hyper-focused on a particular project or task at hand, and someone needs your attention. You may find it very difficult to stop that task, transition to another task, and then come back to your original task. So being mentally flexible is important in your ability to shift from one situation to another. And finally, emotion regulation. Emotion regulation is very difficult for many individuals with weak executive function. So you may stop and think after a particular situation, why did I have such strong emotions to that particular situation? It really wasn't that big of a deal, but I had such a strong emotional response. So emotion regulation is part of that section in the orchestra of your brain. It's important to keep in mind that no one is born with strong executive function. However, we all have the potential to develop strong executive function. Executive function actually starts to develop right after birth, and it continues to develop for most of us through our mid to late 20s. There are some factors, though, that can inhibit that development of executive function. And some of you may be experiencing this right now with your children, or perhaps you're a professional working with students or clients. And you may notice that we expect our students to have strong executive function by the time they reach middle school. However, we rarely teach the underlying skills they need to have in place in order to have strong executive function in elementary school. We do expect everyone just to develop along that path and strengthen executive function on their own. It's important to keep in mind that there are many factors that can inhibit the development of strong executive function. Those can include ADHD, stress, anxiety, or adverse experiences. These factors can either slow or really impair your development of executive function. And we do know that about 95% of individuals with ADHD have weak executive function. So now that we know the different areas, we also have some good news. We know through neuroplasticity that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you with the right tools and the right challenge, you can develop these skills despite your current wiring. We know that age is not a factor. We also know that labels like ADHD are not a factor. If we provide you the right tool and the right challenge, you can create these new neural pathways that are necessary for strong executive function. Now, in reflecting about what executive function is and all of the different sections or all of the different mental processes, I want you to reflect and type in the chat box, how does executive dysfunction affect you on a daily basis? And if you're here because of your child or your spouse or a friend or your clients, you can share with me how executive dysfunction affects them. And we'll share some of the responses. So go ahead and type in the box. If you have weak executive function or executive dysfunction, how is it affecting you in your day-to-day life? Wanda says, it takes me so much longer to get anything done. Excellent. That is absolutely true for many people, I'm sure. Maria says it makes meal planning and cooking almost impossible. You know, Maria, that brings up a really interesting point. And we actually have an ebook on using meal planning and cooking to help develop executive function. So that is a big concern for a lot of people, because you do have to have strong executive function in order to plan and execute a meal. Christina says, I feel I don't actually ever move forward. I am always stagnant and going in circles. Dwayne says, find it impossible to prioritize, plan my day. Feels like working nonstop, but at the end of the day, nothing is really done. And that's so common, Dwayne, where we think, you get to the end of the day and you think, I've been so busy and yet I've accomplished nothing. Sharon says, grocery and meal management is overwhelming. Robert says, hard to make life decisions I know I need to make. Melanie, hard to manage chores and finances. Amanda, in developing it, I have learned to not overwhelm myself and cause emotion dysregulation. Excellent, Amanda. That's a good point. Rita says, I struggle with mental flexibility and it keeps me from doing more than one project within a day. Scott, typing too fast and missing words. Exactly. Thank God for Grammarly. Exactly. And that's that inhibitory control that we talked about, right? A process of executive function where you're able to control that impulsivity and not rush through things and miss important details. Aaron says, my clients stress that and compare themselves to their peers, then feel badly when things don't go as well for them as others. Sharon says, following through on things is so hard. And then I feel so much shame because I'm aware of what I should be doing. Tammy says, everyone in my home has weak executive function. I feel same as Wanda, and I feel overwhelmed. My daughter can't write papers and do the tasks that are needed to stay in college. My husband worries all the time about getting fired, even though everyone thinks he does a great job. Tammy, I want to mention here, because as I discussed earlier, we're going to talk about how play attention can help cultivate strong executive function. And if you're doing a home program, many of our families have a customized plan for each individual in the home so that we can work with the entire family and develop a plan that will suit each individual. Because you're right, so many people, we don't know what causes an attention problem or ADHD or weak executive function, but it does seem to run in many families. So what you're mentioning here is very common, and we can develop customized plans for each family member. Nurika, and excuse me if I pronounce that incorrectly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, makes cleaning and organizing the house almost impossible. Let's see. Gordon says, I don't trust any decision I make and flounder to make it a plan or follow it. Let's see. Terry says, God help my poor hubby when he asks me what I want to have for dinner. You all have such great responses. And I'm sorry, I can't read all of them. Scott says, hard to prioritize when there are a lot of next actions on projects and non-day job requests. It's really important that we share how we're all struggling and how executive dysfunction affects our day to day, because I think it's important, especially for adults, to hear from others, to know that other people are going through the same struggles. So I think that it is important to share your experiences and have a good understanding of how executive function really does affect many people. So now that you've been able to express the areas of concern, of course, that elicits a lot of questions, right? So what do I do? Which path do I take? So you know the areas in which you struggle, but as some of you said, you really don't know what to do, or you're just frustrated. So how do we develop a plan and take next steps? You may talk to yourself and say, I know where I struggle. So do I really need a test to confirm that? Or even if a test confirms this, what do I do about it? Isn't it too late? A lot of adults that I talk to will say, isn't it too late for me? I mean, I'm in my 50s. Surely I can't develop these skills now. And remember, I mentioned neuroplasticity earlier, that the brain is moldable and shapeable. And what we know now through neuroplasticity, it used to be thought that around the age of 9, your brain stopped really changing and developing new neural pathways. You probably heard of it. Some of you that might be my age, you probably heard of it as hardwired. Once we got to a certain age, the ripe old age of 9, typically, you are hardwired, and it was really going to be difficult for you to learn new skills or make changes. But now we know that that is absolutely not true, that you continue to develop skills and create new neural pathways throughout your lifetime. We have play attention clients in their 70s and 80s still making phenomenal changes throughout their lifetime. So it is possible. Now, that being said, keep in mind that brain change doesn't just occur, right? There are certain catalysts that have to be in place in order to spark those brain change. And those critical catalysts are incorporated into play attention. Wanda says, does play attention come with a personal secretary and quote wife? Just kidding, but not really. No, but you will have a personal executive function coach to help you every step of the way, Wanda. So we're part there with you. So let's talk about assessments and how assessments can be a critical part of developing your plan of action. There are many assessments available, and they are tools that help us determine the right path, right? Because you maybe have thought in the past, and the typical is January 1, right? We have all these New Year's resolutions where we have all these goals. I'm going to be better with organization. I am going to be better at controlling my emotions. You have all these goals, but without a plan of action, a goal is just a wish. So we have to have a clear goal and plan of action. And assessments help us in many ways. It defines the problem areas, determines both your strengths and your weaknesses, indicates the severity of those weaknesses, because many times I'll talk to people and they'll say, you know, I was never really identified with weak executive function or ADHD because I just thought that everyone was going through the same thing that I was experiencing. So it's important to really look at how you compare to those peers, right? Is it severe? What is the severity of each weakness? Also, it allows us, of course, as we mentioned, develop a plan of action and provides a baseline to document progress, because we definitely want a way to see progress over time. Now, let's look at the focus and brief assessments. These are two assessments that we have available, and these assessments will actually allow you to get a clear path of a plan of action. The focus assessment is a norm reference test of attentional control. It is computer-based. It takes about 20 minutes. And at the end of the 20 minutes, we receive a full report that tells us how you performed compared to the performance of your peers. So that's one assessment available. And that really looks, again, at attentional control. So we look at different areas such as consistency, we look at performance, your impulse control, your ability to deal with distractors, both auditory and visual. And then we also have the brief available. And I want to talk about the brief a little bit further because the brief assessment is a behavior rating inventory of executive function. So it's specifically designed to assess your executive function on a day-to-day basis. If you look at the brief assessment, I want to give you a summary of what it's able to do. It is available for ages 5 through adult, takes, as I mentioned, about 20 minutes. It's an online questionnaire that can be done from your home or from your office. It's designed to evaluate executive function from multiple perspectives. So the survey can be completed by yourself. If you're an adult, you'll do a self-assessment. If you have a child or a client to consider, then we can also do the brief assessment with the teacher or the parents. So it gives us a good overview of what executive function looks like for that individual on a day-to-day basis. And it pinpoints where and why you struggle. Now, the brief assesses different areas. And if you look at all of the different sections that the brief assesses, you'll notice that these are all the processes within executive function. So once we have determined what areas really need to be addressed, then we can make a plan of action. So what can we do in order to strengthen executive function? There are many tools you can use in order to succeed. And you probably have seen a lot of these that are on the screen many times, right? You've heard, well, just use a calendar. Keep it simple, make a to-do list, use your reminders, break down the assignment into small portions, just breathe, right? You probably have all heard many of these suggestions, and you may have tried many of these tools or tips or strategies. Even in a lot of our webinars and our ebooks, we give these different tips and strategies, and they're important to have. We want you to have these tools in your toolbox because there is value in all of these things. However, if you look at this list, you may be thinking, yep, tried that, did that, been there, and it didn't work. And that's because these are all physical things that we can put into place to help us. However, they don't get to the root cause. We have to get to the root cause of why you have a difficult time with emotion regulation, why you are disorganized, why you have a difficult time managing multiple projects or prioritizing, or you have a difficult time with transitions. We have to get to the root so that we can really, truly develop a strong conductor in your mind, strengthen executive function. Because I can teach you how to do a calendar, and you can spend a couple of hours creating a beautiful calendar. But if I didn't take time to help you develop your memory so that you can remember you have a calendar and you can remember to update that calendar, then the calendar is a tool that really isn't truly benefiting you. We have to work on those underlying skills that right now are weak, but are necessary for strong executive function. And many of you may have children who have a 504, and there's lots of different accommodations in that 504. One accommodation is oftentimes the ability to give your child or your student, if you're a teacher here today, time or extra time for test taking. And that can help, right? Because they have a hard time starting and completing in a timely manner. So that's a good step in an accommodation. But in the meantime, we have to help that individual learn how to focus on a single task, to filter out distractions, or to be able to start and complete assignments in a timely manner. Because if we just continually give longer test time, it's not necessarily teaching them the skills that they need in order to start and complete in a timely manner. So you may notice that your student still sits there and drifts for a little bit longer because they have a longer test taking time. So it's really important that we put the tools out there and we have those tools available for you, but then we have to work on the root cause. And that's what we can do. Play attention can look at the root cause and customize a plan of action. In order to cultivate strong executive function, we need to look at all of these underlying skills, right? Filtering distractions, attention stamina, working memory, visual tracking. We have to look at all of these underlying skills that need to be in place in order to have strong executive function. And that's what Play Attention specializes in. We pinpoint those cognitive areas and customize a specific neurocognitive training plan to help you develop those skills you need in order to have strong executive function. And we know that we can do this because we've been doing this for almost 30 years. I've actually been using Play Attention with my clients since 1996. So for about 25 years, I've worked with every age from about 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So we know that we can look at your particular strengths and weaknesses and customize a plan of action that will help you develop the skills that you need. What makes us unique and effective is what we teach and how we teach it. This is our body wave technology. Play Attention is the only program available that integrates feedback-based technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping to provide you with the most comprehensive approach available. This body wave armband, some of you may have seen it on our website before, or perhaps you've seen it on our website, or maybe in some of our videos that we've sent out, or maybe you've been at a past webinar. But this is our body wave armband. And on the back, there are 3 sensors. And those sensors monitor your brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. And then that information is given over to the computer, where you're allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with your mind, or more specifically, your attention alone. And that's a really important first step in the learning process. Because if you've been told for years, you can't pay attention, you never pay attention, you need to pay attention. Now, the body wave technology is actually going to allow you to experience your attention in real time. You're going to feel what it's like to pay attention. You're going to see your attention in real time. And more importantly, you're going to practice that skill so that you can direct and sustain your attention at will. So we have many different cognitive skill areas, because what we were talking about earlier, there are all these other cognitive skills that we need to have in place in order to have strong executive function. But all of our exercises are brain enabled, meaning you have to be paying attention in order to activate the activity. So whether you're working on attention stamina or working memory or auditory processing or task completion, no matter what exercise you're engaged in, you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then the activity will stop, or the character will go in the wrong direction. And you have to focus back in order to continue. And the reason we do this is because we know the very first catalyst necessary for brain change is attention, right? You can have a great teacher, you can have a great program, you can have a wonderful life coach or counselor. But if you are having a really difficult time paying attention to that individual or that process, it's going to be difficult for you to get maximum benefit and really create those new neural pathways. So that's why we integrate feedback technology with cognitive skill training so that we can make certain that while you're practicing all of these cognitive skills, you are actively engaged in the process. And these are all of the different cognitive skills that are available for your program. And like I said, we're going to customize your plan in order to pinpoint the different cognitive areas that are most important for you or your spouse or your child or your clients. And we do this again by integrating feedback technology. And I want to show you what this looks like. So you see my client on the screen here. This is John. And in this activity, he's working on attention stamina. That is his ability to direct and sustain his attention at will. So you notice in the picture, he has that body wave armband on. And that armband, remember, is monitoring his brain activity, his attentive state that tells us how well he's concentrating. And then that information is given over to the computer so that he's able to control that submarine you see on the screen just with his mind, or more specifically, his attention alone. So in the beginning of this exercise, he'll actually see that character at the top of the screen. Once he's focused and paying attention, he's able to push that character down to the bottom of the ocean, just with his mind alone, just his attention alone. It is amazing, Rita, isn't it? And it's so empowering, more than just amazing, it's empowering, because if you've been told for years, you can't pay attention, you never pay attention, for the first time, within the first couple of minutes of using play attention, you're actually rewarded for paying attention and you experience it. Most of us are experiential learners. And when I can provide you with an experience, you learn from it. So again, now through that immediate feedback and allowing you to experience your attentive state in real time and providing you with that constant and immediate feedback, you're able to develop the self-regulation and self-monitoring you need in order to recognize when you're paying attention, when you're not paying attention, and more importantly, you'll know how to correct it on your own because you've had the opportunity to practice it. So I'll give you a concrete example that you can probably all really relate to. Sometimes you may be in a conversation with someone and you think you're actually paying attention, but then 20 minutes into the conversation, you realize, I have no idea what that person has been saying for the last 25 minutes. Has anyone experienced that before? I'm sure you have. And then you're kind of scrambling to figure out what the conversation is about because you weren't able to catch yourself after you started to drift, maybe 2 or 3 minutes in, you didn't catch yourself and correct it. So now we're helping you develop that self-regulation so that you can catch yourself when you start drifting. And again, more importantly, know how to correct it. We actually track in your data recovery time, and we'll be able to show that to you. How long does it take you from the time you lose your attention to the time you regain it? And can we work towards actually decreasing that amount of time? So as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing this integrative approach of feedback-based technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping for almost 30 years. But Tufts University School of Medicine wanted to know, is that integration important? Or can we give you just a series of cognitive exercises and get the same results? So they went into the Boston Public School District and they had 3 different groups of students, all identified as ADHD. The first group received play attention. So they had full integration, feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. The second group received just cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about as brain games on the computer, but no feedback technology and no behavior shaping. And the third was their control, and they received no intervention at all. And at the end of the study, the play attention students were the only students that showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only students that if they started the study and they were on medication, because some of them were on medication, some of them were not on medication. If they were on medication, the play attention students had an average decrease in their medication, where the other 2 groups had an average increase. And that goes back to skill building. If we can help you develop the skills that you lack, then there may be less of a necessity to mask those symptoms. Okay? Absolutely, Rita. Rita asks about the feedback from the armband. Absolutely. All right. So now let's look at all of those different cognitive areas. So as I mentioned, there are certain cognitive skills that are incorporated into your course. And you may not need all of these different activities or these different modules, but you will begin with the foundations of executive function. So everyone here will receive the modules that are included in the foundations of executive function. So these activities include attention stamina. So we're going to teach you how to direct and sustain your attention at will. Visual tracking. This one is a great one for you if you've ever noticed that you do really well when someone's standing right next to you and having a conversation. But as soon as that person walks away, you're out the window and out the door, and you have that diffused attention. So we work on staying very focused and visually tracking that individual as he or she moves about the room. Task completion. In this course module, we're going to integrate the feedback technology, remember, and teach you how to start and complete in a timely manner so that a 15-minute assignment will take 15 minutes and not 2 or 3 hours. Short-term memory will help you remember dates, names, facts. Filtering distractions. We're going to actually teach you how to filter distractions, both auditory and visual, because we hear so much about attention deficit, and that's really a misnomer. There is no one with a complete deficit of attention. Usually you have great attention. It's just scattered over a variety of things, right? So you know a little bit about what your colleague is saying, but you also know what the bird's doing outside and what your coworker's doing in the back of the room, because you're paying attention to bits and pieces of everything. So it's really not a lack of attention, it's diffused attention. A lot of our adult clients will say it's like there are a million different TV sets going on in my brain all at the same time. So we're going to teach you how to actually stay focused to what's important and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli. And finally, transfer and generalization. This is one of our course modules that is called Academic Bridge. And this is where we're going to have you do real work activities while connected to the body wave system. So you notice our client here, she has that body wave armband on, but she's not looking at the computer. She's actually writing a report. And while she's connected to the body wave system, if she is paying attention to her report, to her task at hand, she's going to hear from the computer, good, great. If she starts to drift, she'll hear focus. And then she knows she's not in that state she needs to be in in order to process that information and complete that assignment. And this is a really exciting area because, of course, we're asking you to take all of those skills you're learning within play attention and apply them to your real task. And that's the end goal, right? It's great if you can do a fantastic play attention session, but our goal is to make certain you're able to transfer and generalize those skills back into the workplace or the home or the school situation. So really important. And we can, really modify this. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to have an executive function coach to help you with this process. So you'll talk to that person about, what are some of the work activities you are having a difficulty with, and how can we incorporate academic bridge? I was working with one adult client, and she was a high school English teacher, and she was struggling with grading papers. She was spending all weekend, 2 days on her weekend, to grade papers because she just had a hard time paying attention to it. It was low stimuli for her. It was hard for her. So we started incorporating academic bridge, and the academic bridge actually helped her learn about things she thought she was doing that was helping her, but they weren't helping her. She learned how to catch herself when she was drifting and how to bring herself back. So now she's down to 2 hours on the weekend instead of 2 days on the weekend. Robert says, can you make those with a female British voice? We don't have a British accent in academic bridge, but that is a possibility for sure. Scott, I'm going to go into the average time. That is a very good question, but I will go into that here in just a moment, how much time it takes, because you're right. When we're talking about training, it does take time and consistency. And we do recommend you work at least an hour per week. And that hour can be broken down. It could be 2 30-minute sessions. It could be 4 15-minute sessions, whatever works best for you personally. But you'll start to see good steps of improvement after about 6 weeks of consistent training. And we're going to go into that a little bit more here shortly. So again, your course will begin with the foundations of executive function. So all of you here today will be working on attention stamina, visual tracking, time on task, short-term memory, discriminatory processing, and the academic bridge or transfer and generalization. And remember, if you're working on any of these modules, you have to be actively engaged. If you're not, then the activity will go no further and you have to focus back in order to continue. Now we have a lot of different activities, and each activity has a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option. So there are certain benchmarks you're going to have to reach before moving up to intermediate and then to advanced. And our artificial intelligence called Sheer Genius will actually track those benchmarks and graduate you when appropriate. And when you get into these higher levels of difficulty, that's where we tie in other processes, such as processing speed. So if you find that you are perhaps a slow processor, meaning you understand the information, it just oftentimes takes you a little bit longer to process that information and then give a response. So we work on processing speed, teaching you how to focus and actually be a little bit quicker in that processing speed. Task switching, so that's that mental flexibility we talked about earlier. Impulse control, and also distractors, that ability to filter both auditory and visual distractors. So as you move up, you're going to be working on the key cognitive skill, but we're also going to incorporate these other processes that, again, are critical in strong executive function. So in order to enhance, because we have all of those modules, those cognitive skills we talked about earlier, but then there are many options for you that you can add into your program at any time. And your executive function coach will assist you with this. You can add these modules and upgrade to what we consider the masterclass modules. So these include working memory. Remember, that's the ability to take in information, hold that information, and then give a response. Auditory processing, the ability to follow through with multiple step verbal instructions. Hand-eye coordination, this is a good one if you have any difficulties with small motor control. So it helps with areas of handwriting or keyboarding. Social skills is a good one if you have any difficulties with peer relationships or picking up on social cues. Motor skills, if you have more bumps, bruises, accidents than your peers, that's a good one for you. Spatial memory is remembering where things are located. So if you come in and you throw your car keys down on the counter, 2 hours later when you have to leave, you'll remember where you put them so you can leave on time. And then finally, mindfulness. You know, we hear so much about how mindfulness helps with the symptoms of ADHD. And that's true. However, we can't look at someone with ADHD and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness, because mindfulness is difficult. It's difficult for all of us. And it's especially difficult if you have a constant scattered mind. But you can learn it if we give you very specific accommodations. And the accommodation we give you here is a visual representation of what it means to be in the present moment. So you're going to see a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once you have your mind in the present moment, you're going to be able to open the petal on the screen. If you start thinking about what's for dinner, what time do I have to pick up the kids, when's my next appointment, that petal is going to start to close because you're no longer in the present moment. And you have to bring yourself back and then be able to continue. Okay, so it is a very good way to start developing that ability to stay in the present moment, especially if you have maybe an attention difficulty or weak executive function and anxiety. This can really help alleviate that as you are able to not think about the what ifs, what's going to happen down the road, what happened yesterday, but stay present, stay in that present moment so that you can focus. So again, all of those course modules that I mentioned cultivate strong executive function, whether you're working on the course modules from our foundations of executive function or in the masterclass modules. They all cultivate strong executive function. Because if you look at all of the modules available, now you may be wondering, well, I don't see organization here. I don't see emotion regulation. And she said that play attention was going to strengthen executive function. But remember what we discussed. In order to strengthen executive function, there are very specific cognitive skills that need to be in place. So if you tell me, well, I have a really hard time regulating my emotions, I'm not going to just say, okay, we're going to work on emotion regulation. We have to break it down, right? In order for you to be able to control your emotions, you have to be able to pay attention to the entire situation. You have to be able to process all of that information. You have to control your impulsive response to that situation. And all of those skills are what you're working on in every single play attention session. So every time you're doing a play attention session, you're strengthening emotion regulation. You're creating that strong conductor, that strong executive function, so that you can be more organized. You can control your emotions. You can be more mentally flexible. That is what we're working towards. Now, let me just run through, because we talked a lot about what executive function is, the different areas we want to improve, how we integrate that feedback with cognitive skills and behavior shaping. But there's a whole process that we break down to make this very easy for you. So first, as we discussed, we are going to assign you a personal executive function coach, one of our coaches here on staff, to assist you every step of the way. Then we're going to assess your needs. Now, as I mentioned, we have the brief or the focus assessments available. Those are options for you that you can decide to do. Again, each one takes about 20 minutes. And if you do want to do an assessment with us, you'll do the assessment, and then we need about a 30 to 40-minute follow-up to review the results with you and customize your plan. Each assessment is typically $50, but with this webinar, as a webinar attendee, you do get those for half price. So if you're interested in doing the brief or the focus assessment, just to get a starting point and that baseline and talk about the plan of action, go ahead and type in assessment, and one of us will follow up with you either to talk to you about the assessments a little bit further or to actually get you registered for one of those assessments. So if you are interested, type in assessment and we will reach out to you following the webinar to assist you with that. So first, you're assigned that executive function coach. Then we'll do the assessment. If you already have assessments, I think someone's actually asking this question. Yes, Tammy. This is exactly what I was going to go through. Tammy says, assessments, what if someone has recently been assessed by a neuropsychological professional? Will the person have to be assessed again? No, Tammy, I would say if you could just share some of that information with your executive function coach, or if we're doing a consultation to talk about play attention a little bit further with you, if you would share some of that information, because if you went to a neuropsych evaluation, you probably have a 20-page report. So no need to do more. Let's just go over what you have, what you know, and we can do the customization from there. Very good question. Okay. Okay, great. And if you want an assessment or more information, just keep typing assessment. Then, as I mentioned, we'll go over your specific needs and customize the neurocognitive training program for you. And remember, this is where we're setting up your coursework, right? We're selecting the different cognitive skills, the different modules that are most important for your course. And as we mentioned earlier, if you're a professional with lots of individuals, or you are a home client with more than one, maybe 4 family members you want to enroll, we can customize a plan for each individual. Then your executive function coach will take you through a practice session. So we've done the assessment, we've set up your profile. Now we're going to take you through a practice session to make sure you're real comfortable with everything before you start your sessions officially. Once we take you through that practice session, you're going to be ready to start your program. And as I mentioned earlier, you're going to work at least an hour per week. And that hour can be broken up. It could be 2 30-minute sessions. It could be 4 15-minute sessions, whatever works best for you personally. Okay. And you're going to do your sessions independent of us, but your executive function coach is always there to look at your data, make suggestions, talk to you about progress, answer your questions. So make certain you take advantage of that information as well. When you start your sessions, we have artificial intelligence called Sheer Genius that's going to guide you through the process. So you don't have to think, oh, I feel like I can't learn another program. Sheer Genius does a lot of the decision-making for you. So when you log in, Sheer Genius is going to say, Wanda, today we're going to work on attention stamina, time on task, and auditory processing. Not only that, but Sheer Genius is going to set a deliberate practice model for you where specific goals are set based on your previous performance. So yesterday you completed time on task with 70% attention. Today, let's try 72%. And if you do that, you earn a point, and the point goes into your reward system. And then, of course, Sheer Genius is going to monitor your progress over time. So at any time when you want to see your progress over time, or again, if you're working with clients and you want to view their progress in each of those cognitive skill modules, you can go into your dashboard and you will clearly see all of your progress over time. And remember, we also have the focus and brief assessments available that we can do pre, mid, and post. So you have that third party assessment as well. but you will always be able to see your progress over time within the Play Attention program. Now, also, step 7 is optional for you. This isn't included in your package, but it is an option. If you would like to do a live Play Attention session with one of our personal trainers, you can do that. This means that you will be doing your Play Attention session, and one of our personal trainers will be able to connect with you via our Play Attention software and do distance training. They're going to be able to see all of your live streaming data. They're going to be able to see you and chat with you live, so that it's just like you're doing a session in an office with a professional, but you're doing it at a distance. So that is an option for you if you would like to have someone doing some sessions with you in a professional setting. Now, Jose asks, what if you do more than an hour per week? Does it make a difference or not really? You know, you can do more than an hour per week. That's just the minimum we recommend. And the reason we say at least an hour per week, and that is the minimum, we do caution against burnout, because sometimes we'll say at least an hour per week, and people think, well, if 1 is good, then 10 is better. And that is not always true, right? We don't want you to burn yourself out. So we caution against burnout, because remember, you're working areas that right now are weak for you. So make certain you work at a consistent pace that is good for you. So if you can handle an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half, that's absolutely fine. But we want to be more concerned about the quality of the session rather than the quantity of the sessions. And Jose, your executive function coach can help you make those decisions. Good question. So after about 6 weeks of consistent training, you're going to start seeing these small steps of improvement. And you're going to notice that you are more engaged. Your focus is better. You just received 2 instructions and you remembered them and you followed through. You are completing your assignments in a timely manner, not just when you're stressed and you're under pressure to get it done. So you're going to start seeing these small steps of improvement. But remember, what you're not seeing is what's actually occurring in the brain. And that's that you're causing these new neural pathways to become formed. And in the beginning, those networks are weak. But through the practice and repetition, we're actually strengthening those new neural pathways to a point of permanency. And that's our goal, because we want to know that not only will you have these skills now, but you'll have them 20 years from now. We want to make certain you carry these skills into adulthood. If you're a younger child, we want to make certain that if you're an adult, you're carrying these throughout your lifetime. And permanency, on average, it's different for everyone, but on average, it takes about 40 hours total. So if you're planning on that hour per week, I would plan on graduating the course after about 10 months of consistent training. At that point, you and your executive function coach will look at your data, make certain you're at all the advanced skill options, make certain that everything's transferred and generalized, maybe do another brief assessment to help us assess that transfer and generalization. If everything looks good, then we can start graduating you from the program. If it looks like there's more work to be done, we simply customize the plan and we keep going. The important thing for you to keep in mind is that you have a lifetime membership. So whether this takes you 10 months or 16 months, you always have support and the use of your system. Also, if you graduate and you want to continue using it for peak performance training, you can do that as well. So these are some of the outcomes you'll see, right? Because once we can get to the root cause and help you develop those underlying cognitive skills that lay the foundation for strong executive function, you will have increased attention. You will be more organized. You'll have better control over your emotions. You'll notice that your relationships are improving, that your productivity at work is better. If you're struggling in academics, maybe you're able to complete that college course you've been working on. So these are just examples of the outcomes that you will see when we can actually create a strong conductor in your mind. We can strengthen executive function and help you really bring all of those mental processes together. Now, some of you, I wanted to mention, there are a lot of young adults here. So if you are taking a gap year, or if you have a child who is taking a gap year, now's the time to really focus on a customized plan of action. Because what are you going to do to make that gap year productive? How are you going to use that gap year to help develop the skills they need in order to transition from high school into university? And so we can help develop a plan of action that we can put in place during this gap year so that once they go into that college situation, they can be more successful. Something for you to keep in mind, because I know a lot of you are at that point in your life where you have your maybe it's yourself, or maybe your child is going into university and there's that big transition. So this is everything that your program will include. You'll have your body wave technology, whether this is for the professional version or the home system. You'll have your body wave technology. You'll have your customized neurocognitive training plans, your behavior shaping component, a personal executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. You'll have that training session where we take you through a mock session to make sure you're real comfortable with everything before you start working on your sessions officially. And of course, that lifetime membership that I mentioned earlier. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. We look forward to working with you very soon. Take care.